Every other year, Rogers State University holds the Maurice Meyer Endowed Lecture Series on the campus of RSU. This lectureship was established by Irvin Frank in the honor of his uncle, Sergeant Maurice Meyer, who died defending freedom and democracy in World War I when he was wounded by German shrapnel on September 23, 1918. This year's guest lecturer is the distinguished jurist and Claremore native, Darnell Jones II, who is a U.S. District Judge for the Eastern District of Pennsylvania. Thank you for being here today.
My pleasure, my pleasure.
It's good to know that some Oklahoma stock is making it up in the world, right?
Well, you know, when I was here, they called me Darnell. Now they call me Judge Jones. So
it's always good to have that judge. Whatever you want, Judge. Well, real quick, let me kind of read a little bit of your resume so the folks know exactly what all you've been doing since you've left Claremore. Your law degree from American University in Washington College of Law, a bachelor's degree in French at Southwestern College. I have to understand why you were thinking that. You practiced law at the Defender Association of Philadelphia, where you were, among other responsibilities, you served as chief of the Family Court Division. Then you became a judge in the Court of Common Pleas in Philadelphia in 1987. And then you held various positions on that Court of Common Pleas, including managing judge, Judicial Education Committee, and I can go on all day long here. But in 2005, you served as president judge of the Court of Common Pleas for the 1st Judicial District of Pennsylvania. That's a mouthful. Then you went on and did some more, but in 2008, you were nominated by George W. Bush and sworn in as judge in the Eastern District for Pennsylvania. So you have really climbed the ranks from the good old days of going to school, partying with the best of them, but now you have to be a distinguished judge. What's that like, being a judge on the federal level?
Well, first of all, the highest honor was being class president of the class of 1968 at Claremore High School.
Really?
But no, being a federal judge, it is a most unique opportunity. I jokingly call it a guilty pleasure. But in all reality, it is an awesome experience. It's an awesome responsibility. It's one that clearly every federal judge takes seriously. I was told when I first arrived, I had already been on the state court in Pennsylvania for 21 years as a state trial judge before I became a federal judge. But my newfound colleagues told me, Darnell, this is the best job in the world. They're accurate. It is truly an incredible responsibility and a very, very enjoyable experience.
Well, you graduated Claremore in 1968.
Correct.
That was probably some of the most turmoil-filled times in our country. Not so much here in Oklahoma as it was in Chicago and every place else, but you got to witness a little bit of that here in Oklahoma. You lived a segregated life up to that point. What was it like living in Claremore, Oklahoma, where your school was a segregated school, then it became a non-segregated school? What was that like?
Well, thanks to the experiences and really the maturity of my parents, in the sense that they taught me and my sister how to assimilate. They were just incredibly committed to education and would tell us all the time that the only way you're going to get out of this situation is to be well educated. Of course, well educated in those days meant your job is going to be that of a school teacher. So my sister, a music teacher, I'm a French teacher, or at least I'm certified to be a French teacher. But I wanted to ultimately go into the diplomatic corps and decided, let me combine my French degree with a law degree, and hence I went to Washington, D.C. Now, in terms of the tumultuous times in Claremore, there really were no tumultuous times in Claremore. Nevertheless, growing up here in those days, if you will, as I alluded to in my speech this morning, I can remember those of us who were African-American kids not being able to go to the public swimming pool here, right down the street, except on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And when people kind of swell up and get teary-eyed about that, I always comment that, well, that's just my excuse for not being an Olympic swimmer, that's all. If I had 7 days a week, I would have been grand. But, and I also made reference this morning to perhaps, growing up as kids, and, we were teenagers, middle teens. A few of the other blacks on the teams, we would go out of town to some of the surrounding towns. And every game, at the end of it, you'd come back on the bus and pull the bus over at the restaurant, go in and have a post game dinner.
Mm-hmm.
But the coach would get off the bus, go inside, and on the bus we were all yucking it up and everything. Then the coach would get back on the bus and say, "Boys, I'm sorry, it's full in there. We have to go down the road and find another restaurant." Well, everybody on the bus was laughing and joking, but the other two black kids and myself would look at each other and just shake our heads because we knew that empty parking lot, the restaurant wasn't full.
Right.
It just simply was that they said, "Oh, no, they can't come in here and eat."
Right.
And that was every time we went out of town for an out-of-town game. Again, it hurt, but it was the times, and my parents were strict about indoctrinating us with suck it up and keep on going, and that's what we did.
So it didn't have a negative impact on your life?
Very temporarily, just in terms of being extra cautious and being guarded about situations, but by the same token, we learned to assimilate and turn stumbling blocks into stepping stones, I like to say.
How did you end up in Pennsylvania?
Well,
I've been there. It's a great community. But how did you from Claremore, Oklahoma, to Pennsylvania?
I went to law school. I went to college at Southwestern College in Winfield, Kansas. That's
Right.
where I majored in French. Decided to get a law degree. And one of the schools that I applied to where I was accepted was the American University in Washington, D.C. Now, I tell people that actually I had a hearing problem, and I could have sworn Horace Greeley said, "Go east, young man." But I went to American University, and upon graduating from American University, I went to Philadelphia to practice law.
Really?
Yeah.
Did you ever think about coming back?
I thought about coming back to Claremore, and I just felt like, for right now, let me prepare myself to be able to come back and be somebody, if you will, in Claremore. One thing led to another. I went from being an attorney to being a state trial judge and to a federal judge.
Would those doors, you think, have been open here as they were there?
I honestly did not believe that they would be, but since within probably the last 5 to 6 years, I've met very accomplished African-American judges from
Right.
Oklahoma at some of the conferences that I've attended around the country. And it's refreshing. It's good to see that the doors are opening. But quite candidly, when I was growing up, it was something that we never envisioned.
Well, that brings up a great question, or at least I think it's a great question. And the judiciary seems to be really white. So how do you, as an African American from Oklahoma, you're in that group now. Mm-hmm. So how do the doors become open to more, not just of African American descent, but of Chinese descent or of Hispanic descent?
Well, I think it starts with accepting a number of students from diverse backgrounds into law schools. I teach at the University of Pennsylvania Law School, a very prominent Ivy League law school. And when I first started teaching there in 1993, I think I probably had no African Americans, next to no Asians, and very few anything else, as they say, other than the typical Caucasian male and a few females. Well, over the years, that has changed dramatically. I have African American students in my class, and more than one when I teach, as well as a lot of females. I have students from Asia, Korea, Russia, I mean, just everywhere you can imagine, globally. And I think that's the kind of diversity that the school is actually committed to maintaining and increasing. There is a very, very big effort on the part of a lot of schools, particularly American University, Penn, where I teach. I'm on the board of Drexel Law School in Philadelphia. And a lot of schools are beginning to realize it's all about the global culturalization that's going to make them attractive worldwide, not just within that particular location within a state.
I'm guessing by asking this question, and I think I know the answer, you chose the right profession for you to be in.
Mm-hmm.
Would you have changed growing up, looking back, would there have been another profession you would have done?
Now that I have arrived, if you will, I can realistically look back and say I was not really going to be able to be Willie Mays for the San Francisco Giants. I can now admit that. So I am in the right place now.
Well, there you go. That's not bad. That's not bad at all. How often do you get back to Claremore?
I try to come back at least once every 2 years.
Do you?
Depending upon what's going on in the world. If I'm at a conference somewhere nearby, I'll try to hop on a plane and come over. Yeah, I don't have a family here. I have a blood family in Tulsa, but I have a community family here in Claremore. And just as recently as this summer, 3 of my Caucasian friends and I joined together and met in Michigan at another Claremore High School grad's house. And the 4 of us drove up to Central Michigan University to watch the Oklahoma State University football game. And from there, we went up to the Canadian border.
Oh, wow.
And we were just like 4 little kids from Claremore High School having a great time up and back. But it's that kind of camaraderie, that kind of friendship for life, that, as we say, that always brings me back here. I can't stay away too long.
Well, Judge, thanks for stopping by.
My pleasure.
Great to have you on
Thanks for having
campus.
me
Great
here.
to have you here at the TV station. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
When we come back, Sam Jones will have more coming up on Perspectives.